Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the TRUTHEARS Nova. This is the latest IM from TRUTHEARS, a 1+4 hybrid this time. It's being sold for around $150, and this particular unit I got it from SHENZHENAUDIO. Anyway, let's just get through the box here quickly so you guys can see what it is all about. Just in the back, as usual, it's got some of the characteristics. They talk about 123 decibels of sensitivity, 14.8 ohms of impedance. The graph that they have and the graph that I measured is basically the same thing. So one of the few times that actually what they measured and what I graphed was almost identical, although obviously we must keep in mind that there are of course the differences in the rigs that they are using. The rig that I'm using a 711. Currently I'm actually using an R500 from Rose Techniques as my power source, and I have to say that the measurements I've been getting are way more precise than what I was using before. So I will probably be redoing a lot of my measurements, and let's see if I can finally get my squiggly going. Anyway, like I said, 1+4, it's got a PU and LCP dynamic driver, and then 4 BAs. I'm not sure what the BAs are, what they are, what brand, Knowles or Sonian, but that again is irrelevant. It's what's most important is, are they well implemented? Okay, so that's that. As for the box, let me see if this will open. Yes, it's opening. Okay, you remove the lid. Got a little cover here. Take the cover out. The IMs come over there. It brings a nice selection of tips. It brings some dual flanges over here, brings some foams, and then brings these silicone ear tips. I'm actually still using the silicone ear tips. I tried a couple of tips on the Nova. I tried my 07s like I usually do, both in medium and large size from KBE. I tried the velvet tips, the Divinius velvet tips. I tried the Tangzhou Sankai tips as well. Excuse me. So I tried a varied number of tips, and the differences between those tips and these stock ones is minimal or basically non-existent. On the Tangzhou, a little bit of an extra dip at around the 6 to 7K area, but still nothing that is significant or nothing that you can kind of say, no, you're going to pick up on it. At least I couldn't pick up on it, okay? And then in this box here, it brings the carrying case, which is a soft style carrying case. It's nice enough. I mean, it fits quite well the IM inside. It's got this little hook to put it up to your, I don't know, belt or something, I guess. The only thing I say against it is that obviously it's not going to really protect your IM as opposed to a hard style case. But anyway, look, it is what it is. It's not a deal breaker. It's nice that it brings one. Okay, let's get this out of the way here. So we've seen the box, we've seen part of the accessories. Let's look at the IM. Okay, this is the Nova. Beautiful resin shell with this nicely designed faceplate. Very subtle, very classy, nothing too outrageous, nothing too shouty or anything of the sort. It looks nice. I'll talk about another detail here quickly on the shell in a second, but I just want to talk about the cable. The cable is actually quite a nice cable, although let's be honest here, this is a basic cable that's just been braided. Okay, let's just be honest about it. This is no fancy cable here. This is nothing out of this world. It is a nice cable. It is a little bit longer than usual. This cloth weave that they've put on top of the actual cable itself is nice, gives it a nice feel, and it helps with microphonics, helps with it not tangling up. So in that aspect, well done. It's a 3.5 mil. The only criticism really I make to it is the fact that it's got these very nasty looking chip tip, terminations. A nice termination would have been cool, and also originally the hook was very close. I gave it a little bit of heat and opened it up, so now it's much better. As for the shells, as I was saying, resin, and I want to call your attention here to a detail, to a something here, which is, look at how inclined that nozzle is. What that basically means is that it's really going to go into your ear nicely, and although it's a relatively big IM, I mean, the Nova is not a small IM by any measure, it fits so nice, it goes so deep that it wasn't an issue. I had absolutely no issue. And just for you to understand what I'm talking about with regards to the nozzle, let me just grab here quickly the cara, and I'm also going to grab the left side. Okay, so First of all, as you can see, the size of the Nova is huge. I mean, this is gigantic next to the Nova, next to the Cara, sorry, and they both have a 1+4 setup, okay? The thickness is roughly the same, not much difference, but where there is a difference is in that angle of that nozzle. So now look at the angle of the nozzle there on the Nova, and look at the angle of the nozzle on the Cara, okay? That more pronounced angle on the Nova, like I said, allows for a much deeper insertion and for a nice big IM like this to actually sit nicely in your ear. The Cara gets away with having such a straight nozzle because it actually is small, so it kind of goes inside of that whole ear space there. However, in my case, I still have to kind of incline it slightly. So when it's sitting in my ear, it's not sitting straight. It's actually sitting slightly inclined. Doesn't bug me, but you know, and that doesn't happen, for example, in the Nova. The Nova, it sits absolutely straight because the nozzle is long enough and has that angle being pronounced enough to be deeply inserted. Okay. Anyway, let me just put this here back in its place in the Cara. So that's it, guys. I mean, in terms of the physical aspects of it, TRUTHEARS has done their homework. You know, it's given us decent enough accessories. I guess $150 for the whole thing is not a bad price. It's within reason. Fair enough. You could argue, okay, how much? I mean, is it worth twice the price of the Hexa? And I'll say straight away, yes. I haven't brought out the Hexa yet to compare it because I just feel that this is an overall much superior product. Okay, so that's the only reason why I haven't got out yet the Hexa. So you know, comparing $80 with the 150 of the TRUTHEARS Nova, definitely the TRUTHEARS Nova is, in my opinion at least, the best or the wiser choice if you haven't got either one of them and you want to have a TRUTHEARS. Okay, they both have a kind of a similar tuning, but this is more well executed. Okay, so what have I brought out here to compare or to kind of set some positioning of the Nova against? I brought IMs here of a varied price range. I've got here the Caster, the Harman version. I know straight away I'm probably going to be getting some people asking, oh, but how are you possibly comparing it to the Caster? Well, when I show you the graph, you'll understand why I actually took out the Caster, because I listened to this, and when I was listening to it, you know, you start getting vibes of other IMs that you heard, and definitely I got the vibe of the Harman. So I got the KZ here. I've got the SIMGOT EM6L because it is, for the price and for the sound and for the performance, it is a solid IM. Okay, obviously the Cara, more or less the same value as the Nova, about $169. Also had to be here 1+4. On top there, I've got the AudioSense AQ4, kind of a forgotten hero. Again, it shares very much the same style of tuning as the Nova. Like I was saying, all of them have the same style of tuning up to now. The one that probably graphically at least will show biggest differences is this one here, where there seems to be a significantly more bass, but you'll see it in a second. And this one here, the Cara has kind of a more tucked bass as opposed to this one. But anyway, when I show you the graphs, I'll explain it better. Next to the AQ4, obviously I had to have here the Performer 5. Again, makes sense. It's an IM that's one of the most solid choices under $200 for a hybrid. I had to have it. Of course, the Chopin is here. Why? Because I posted a couple of days ago a graph where it shows them being so equal, and then it's interesting to see how you know, that similarity in the graph, much like the similarity here in the graph of the Caster, and it doesn't necessarily translate to the exact same sound. And finally, I brought out here the Blessing 3 because it again has somewhat the same sort of tuning style, although a little bit different in certain aspects, or at least how you perceive it. Okay. Anyway, so what is the sound of the Nova? The Nova is a 2019 Harman curve, period. That's it. It's as simple as that. It's well executed. Yes, it is well executed. The bass has got a sub-bass focus, which is very noticeable in specific songs, like, for example, Riviera or La Belle Dame Sans Regrets or The House of Groove. You get that nice bass going, although some could argue that it wouldn't do, or it could do with a little bit more of mid-bass impact. Honestly, it didn't really bother me. It had enough mid-bass to, you know, fulfill my requirements. And you know, let me just make one thing straight here. This opinion that I'm giving on the Nova is based on the unit that I have. I've actually seen one or two other reviews of the Nova where people have got slightly different opinions to mine, and the graphs also seem to be slightly different to mine. So I can't really, talk about what they heard or what they graphed or what their IMs are like. I can talk about what my Nova is like. Okay, so in terms of the mid bass not being suffice, in my case it's fine. Like maybe in, for example, House of Groove, it could have a little bit more slam, but the quantity is basically there. It's the quality of that bass that then is another story, which we'll get into it in a second. So sub bass and mid bass are fine, although the sub bass is the one that comes out on top. The transition into the mids is flawless. It's got no bleed, so male and female vocals come out absolutely fantastic. Male vocals have got the right amount of huskiness, female vocals perfect. If anything, on the female vocals in that transition to the upper mids, on occasions maybe it gets a little bit less polished, but nothing again aggressive. This is just a minor nitpick. And then it's got pretty decent treble. I mean, it's for the most part it keeps up with the rest of the range. It does its work. It's clean. It's detailed. Maybe again on occasions, one or two songs like You from Cecile Norby, you feel a little bit, or Tequila Moon from Jessie J, you can feel a little bit. They could be just a smidge cleaner, okay? But that's please, me nitpicking. That's me really being hard on the Nova. It's I'm sure a lot of you might not even think the same thing as me. So in terms of its frequency response, it's fine. The only two details which are worth calling out or mentioning, and they are minor, mind you, is perhaps on some songs some of you might find it a little bit lacking in the mid bass. So some things like rock maybe will not be able to satisfy 100% some of you, because it doesn't have the necessary impact of the bass drums and of the bass guitar and so on. And then in the treble, sometimes that transition from the upper mids to the treble gets a little bit out of whack, a little bit unpolished. It doesn't get aggressive, doesn't get sibilant, nothing of the sort, but just a little bit unpolished. And you notice it when you compare it with some of these other IEMs. By itself, I'm sure you won't even pick up on it. Technically, I was expecting a little bit more. I won't deny it. I was expecting a little bit more, but I guess it's acceptable. I think the two characteristics which are probably the better ones of the Nova, or its timbre and tonality, which are very correct. There's nothing really that is not sounding the right manner, let's put it that way. And its detail resolution or detailed retrieval is also pretty good. So resolution, detailed retrieval, very good. Nothing really of an issue there. The imaging and the soundstage are good. Soundstage a little bit on the smaller side. It's got acceptable width, acceptable height, acceptable depth. Didn't really give me that kind of 3D imaging or 3D sensation that I like. And the imaging is rather soundstage that I like. And the imaging, it was relatively capable of pinpointing everything. On occasions it got a little bit confused if the track was a little bit more complicated, but otherwise nothing really dramatic. Little Fuge in G minor from Jacques Lassois Trio, one of the songs that I really enjoyed listening to it on the Nova, I have to say. Very, very nice. Compare them, just a quick comparison here with the IMs that I have here. Like I said, compared with the Caster, I mean, they graphed very similar. You get the vibe of the Nova, unquestionably, but here I do notice the thinness in the bass. That, for example, I guess is the reason why a lot of people prefer the Caster in the bass version as opposed to the Harman version. The bass here, although graph-wise it seems very similar here, no, it's thinner, it's not as pronounced. The mids and upper mids and so on are pretty decent, and they do a good job, let's put it that way. Keeping in mind that this is $15, so that's 10 times the price. This is not a bad purchase, or not a bad way of maybe getting a little bit of a vibe of a Nova. And I guess maybe if you put a little bit of extra, EQ the bass a little bit, it's not something that I like doing particularly, but I guess if you EQ the bass very smartly, just to give it another 2 or 3 dBs across the whole sub bass to mid bass without it letting bleed into the mids, maybe you will probably get a very solid Nova sounding IEM. But of course the Nova is the better one compared to the EM6L. The area where I found that the EM6L just slightly loses out is in that ultimate sub bass extension of the Nova. Otherwise, in terms of the mid bass, and the majority of the bass, mind you, I actually found that the EM6L kept up very well with the Nova, although it's got a smaller driver, an 8mm as opposed to 10, and the cleanliness of the bass was even superior to the Nova. So overall in the bass department, I give it to the EM6L. In terms of the mids, they are very similar. There's not really much difference. Then in the upper mids and treble, I think the EM6L again slightly edges out the Nova. It's not huge, but it slightly edges out the Nova, at least in my ears. A lot of people as well mentioned that this was a little bit too bright, a little bit too high, intense, and so I never found that. I found that it's got really good extension. I've always thought that about the EM6L. I think it's a really well tuned 1+4 IM, and compared to the Nova, would this be an upgrade? Definitely not. If you have an EM6L, the Nova is not an upgrade. Okay. Compared to the Cara, and the Cara is one of the IMs that I usually recommend as well in the under $200 price bracket for a hybrid. It is evident that although graphically it seems like it's got a little bit more mid-bass than the Nova, I didn't perceive it that way. What I did perceive was that the bass here is more pillowy, while the bass there is a little bit more clean, a little bit more impactful, which is something that, for example, the EM6L, that's where you notice the difference between these two, the EM6L and the Nova, is that the bass there is just cleaner. It hits and stops quicker. Over here, it's a pillowy bass, which kind of can, give you that fluffy feeling to the music and so on, which some might like, but specific songs that you want that impact, you want that cleanliness. Up and Up from Jeff Ryan, for example, Right on Time from George Duke, and being that pillowy kind of bass, it doesn't do it as well. So the Nova does it better. The Nova as well, in terms of the mids, they are basically the same. I would probably say the tension slightly edges out the Nova, and then in terms of the upper mids and treble, I would say that the Nova is perhaps edging out the Cara. So, is having a Cara, is the Nova a good alternative or an upgrade? I wouldn't say an upgrade, but if you haven't bought anyone and you want to buy one of the two, I would probably maybe go for the Nova. Honestly, I would probably go for the Nova, and that says a lot because, as you guys know, I've praised the Cara quite well, and I think it's a fantastic IM, mind you, I really do. But the truth is, the Nova is slightly edging it out. I think that the Cara's biggest drawback really is that the dynamic driver that they used should have been a better quality dynamic driver. If they had used a better quality dynamic driver, and as well the BAs that handling the higher frequency were just slightly more well implemented, I think that the Cara could significantly give a jump in its performance, and I don't think it's too difficult for them to do something like that. But anyway, it is what it is. Compared to the AQ4, definitely more mid-bass than the Nova. That's really noticeable. It's got about the same extension in terms of the sub-bass, but definitely more extension, more impact in the mid-bass. Obviously, that comes at a cost of it then muddying up a little bit the mids and so on, so it's not as clean as the Nova. Although mid-wise, if I just take the mids and the upper frequency, the AQ4 probably edges out ever so slightly the Nova. So in terms of the mids, upper mids and treble, I think the AQ4 is edging out ever so slightly the Nova. The Nova handles the lower frequencies better in a more cleaner fashion, and that then gives us a more open sound, let's put it that way, to a certain extent. Okay. Again, here I would think they are more side grades to each other, because this has definitely got a lot more bass. So if you are more bass heavy, or if you like more bass, this will probably be the better one for you, as although the Nova has got good bass, I can't really consider it a bass head IM, definitely not. Compared to the Performer 5, a lot of the things that I mentioned about the EM6L apply themselves again here to the Performer 5. The Performer 5 loses out only in terms of sub-bass quantity and presence as opposed to the Nova, but then the rest, there's a little bit extra more cleanliness in the slam of the mid-bass, which is beneficial and adds that extra little bit to some songs, which the Nova does it, but does it in a more subdued manner. The mids, I think, are absolutely fantastic. Nothing to be said. They're very coherent across the whole range of the mids, upper mids, and treble. It scales very well. Something that it's not that the Nova doesn't scale well. The Nova does scale well, but when you increase the volume a little bit more, that's when you start seeing that little bit of lack of polish in the upper mids and treble coming up sometimes. While over here, it always keeps itself very composed. It always keeps itself very homogeneous across the whole response. Okay, the Chopin. Well, this is an easy one. The Chopin is a better IM. It is a Nova, just better, more well executed. Really good bass, not only in terms of the quantity, but the quality of the bass is very good. Yes, the Nova does have kind of the same style of bass, but the Chopin is doing it better. And considering it's got an 8mm driver, that for me straight away is a winner there. Mids and treble, everything is just cleaner. It's just we don't have that lack of polish, that lack of of class in the mids and in the treble that we sometimes find in the Nova. It's just a more well executed, more well tuned, more carefully tuned IM. The sound, the graph, and it is similar, but you notice that it's not a difficult thing to pick up on. You notice that this is just a more mature, more well executed IM. Although graphically you would say no, it's the same thing. It's very much what happens again with the Castor. You look at them and you think, okay, this is going to sound the same, and then when you listen to it, no, you can definitely see that this is a upgrade. Definitely, the Nova is definitely an upgrade over that. And again, here the Chopin is an upgrade over the Nova. Obviously, not as a big of an upgrade, but it is an upgrade. Okay, and then finally here the Blessing. Again, another IM which is more expensive than the Nova. This is talking about $319, so I'll be talking roughly twice and a little bit the price of the Nova. Does it offer twice and a little bit the performance of the Nova? No, not really. I would say that the mids and the upper mids and the treble are more well executed. They are cleaner to a certain extent, but also that's due to the fact that you don't have as much bass as you do on the Nova, and they do scale better. They do take to volume, to playing louder better than on the Nova. Again, these are minor differences. Is the Nova a solid alternative of the Blessing if you cannot afford the Blessing? Definitely so. Yes, definitely. Especially because at least in the bass, it will be able to fill out certain gaps that the Blessing is not able to do. Of course, we know that was probably done to a certain extent on purpose. When the Dusk 3 comes out, that issue will most likely have been resolved. So we will be getting an IM that now is complete. But as it stands, yes, the Blessing 3 is a very nice IM. It plays very nicely, and I've never had anything to say negative against it. But the bass is just a little bit behind the bass of the Nova in quantity, not quality. Quality wise, the bass here is superior. Okay, let's make that perfectly clear. All right, so there we have it. Let me just quickly tell you the prices because I actually forgot. So that's 15, that's 109, that's 169, that's 179, that's 189, that's 200, and that's $319. So you can see what I was talking about, that varied range of IMs that all kind of have a similar vibe to the Nova. Does the Nova obviously then have a place in the market and in this segment of the market? Of course it does. Of course. I mean, obviously, like I said, there are IEMs here which, if you have them or if you own them, this is not going to be worthwhile getting. But for example, if you were deciding between the Cara and the Nova, like I said, I would decide for this. If you're deciding between the Nova and the AQ4, again, whether you like more bass or less bass is going to be the determining factor. But it's an easy choice to do here. With regards to the SIM card, no, the SIM card, if you have that, stay with the SIM card. This is not going to bring you anything extra. Obviously, if you have the Castor and you want to upgrade, definitely yes. With regards to the Blessing, if you want to get something of the Blessing vibe with a little bit extra bass and it's less than half the price, definitely the Nova is an alternative. Compared to the Chopin and to the Performer 5, I don't think the Nova offers anything as well more. So if you have either one of those two, or if you're undecided between those two will, at least for me, be always the better choice. Okay, and that's it, guys. I'll show you now quickly the graph so you guys can see what's it all about, and we'll wrap it up. All right, take care. Hi guys, and welcome now to the graphs for the Nova and the other IEMs that I talked about. This is the graph of the Nova. As you can see, really good sub-bass focus, and flat by 200 hertz. So this mid-bass section here is a little bit on the thin side. Nothing dramatic, nothing that really offended me, but it is a little bit on the thin side. Then very nice across the whole of the mids with a very progressive pinna gain, peaks at about 3 and then starts dropping. This is perfect Harman 2019 execution, nothing to be said there. The extension that is present past 10k, you feel it, you can sense that it's there, but it just doesn't, at least for me, bring me that sensation of space, of 3Dness that I would have liked. So that's why I said the soundstage is okay for the most part. Alright, so let's start comparing it here with some IVMs. I'll show you now first the KZ. Okay, this is the KZ, the cast of the Harman. I mean, and it doesn't get a lot closer than this. You would think that the bass would be similar, and no, the bass on the caster is way thinner sounding, unquestionably. The quality of it, I guess you could say, it's kind of similar, but way thinner sounding. It doesn't have the same emphasis. The mids, I would say from about 300-400 hertz up to about 5k, they sound very similar. This section here actually sounds very similar. You just notice that the Nova is a little bit extra more polished, a little bit more detailed about how it's doing it. Obviously it's got BAs helping out, and the BAs have got always that little extra resolution, that little extra more twinkly and sparkly that helps out, as opposed to a dynamic driver. But I mean, of course, the Nova is a better IM. I just found it very curious to see an IM that has a very equal graph, and the sound is completely different. On that note, I'll just show you now the Chopin, so that you can also understand what I was saying about the Chopin. The Chopin, where is it? No, I believe it's this one. Yes, number 9. So the Chopin, as I put up the graph a couple of days ago, also graphs very similarly, very similarly. However, and it's not as noticeable as you would think here in the graph, because you look at it and you don't really see any difference. But because the balance between the sub bass and let's say the bass on the Nova is done being more skewed towards the sub bass, and on the Chopin it's more balanced out, you do feel that there's a little extra amount of slam on the Chopin. There is more. It's a quicker, more impactful, more resolved bass than on the Nova. Definitely, that's noticeable. So although graphically you might not pick up on that, it's quite you can notice it when you start listening to it. The mids and so on, I would say between 200-300 hertz and about 3-4k, they're very similar, not much difference. It's then in that transition from the upper mids to the treble that you start seeing that the Chopin is just more mature, more classy, it's more polished. It's you listen to the Nova and you pick whatever song you want, and I'm sure you will be surprised, and it will please you and so on. And then you take that same song and you put it straight away without wasting too much time. You put it on the Chopin and you just feel the Chopin is just taking that up kind of 5 or 6 steps in terms of overall quality. It's just ever so more detailed. The same kind of thing that happens like with the KZ and the Nova when we did the comparison. Okay, so that's that. Compared to the full Performer 5, again, very similar sounding, a very similar looking graph, especially in the bass, but you notice that they are full in terms of the mid bass has struck a better balance and is more present, it's more impactful, it's a cleaner bass as opposed to the bass of the Nova, which has got more sub bass, and you can pick up on that as well, but then it lacks that little bit of extra slam there. In terms of the mids of the full, it's spot on, beautifully done, and that balance between the mids and the extension past 10k just confers it with very nice technicalities overall, in my opinion. I mean, as you can see, everything sits within a very nice tight window. 79, the majority sits within 86, so we're talking 7 dBs of window of window operation of their full, while the Nova, is it the Nova? Let me just make sure. Yes, that's the Nova. The Nova sits within a window of 78, and the majority is about it's 87, so 9 dBs. It doesn't seem like it's a lot of difference, but you can pick up on the Performer 5 being just that little extra more detailed, that little extra more mature sounding. It's not a huge difference, please, mind you, it's not a huge difference, but it's you can pick up on it if you're careful. All right, so the Performer 5 is done. SIMGOT EM6L, exactly. The SIMGOT, you would think by looking at this graph, oh my god, the SIMGOT has got crazy amounts of bass and it's going to bleed into the mids and all this. No, it doesn't, because it's an 8mm driver. So this amount of energy that you see here entering the mids, that is not as pronounced or not as present as you would think. On the other hand, the fact that it does have very good extension up top, it kind of counterbalances that issue there. So what you do feel, or what does come across, is a very balanced out sound, and a sound that keeps up very well with the Nova. I mean, very, very well. Honestly, the little extra mid bass that the SIMGOT has, and the cleanliness that it offers in the upper mids and treble is sufficient for it to be very solidly equal to the Nova. Very solidly equal to the Nova. Okay, so that's the SIMGOT. The next one now is the AQ4 from AudioSense. It's not here that you see the differences. As you can see, they're very similar, but both in terms of energy level, where they peak, how they progress through the whole of the upper mids and treble. Very similar here. You notice this more on the AudioSense, especially if it's a song that doesn't have a lot of bass and sub bass to impact it. You will notice this more on the AudioSense, and you will notice that it does have a little bit more that 3D-ness, which is lacking on the Nova. And then definitely, yes, it's got more mid bass impact, more it's fuller. That does come at the price of it kind of congesting a little bit than the vocals, okay? And then it's not as clean. It just lacks a little bit of that cleanliness when you're hearing everything normally. More engaging, yes, I guess you could say it's more engaging. It's fun. Yes, you can listen to some nice rock on it, at least slightly better than you can on the Nova. But overall, there are two IMs that, it's what you want. They are very similar, let's put it this way. From 800, 900 hertz above, they kind of are basically the same thing, okay? Maybe the AudioSense just a little bit less unpolished, okay, in the treble. The difference is what you want. You want a warmer presentation with more mid-bass impact, or you want a thinner, more lighter presentation of the bass. But I mean, it's choices here, okay? So that's that. The binary I've shown you, the Chopin, the Cara. Yes, I was forgetting the Cara. The Cara, graphically, it seems like it's got a lot more mid bass, and it doesn't. It really doesn't. The Nova is better in that aspect than the Cara. Mids are basically the same. I would say maybe the Cara just slightly edges out, and then although you would think that there's basically the same amount of upper mids and treble and everything, no, the Nova is better. Even having that little bit less polish that it sometimes happens, it is still better. There's still more twinklies, more sparklies, more detail up top, so it is better than the Cara. The Cara's got a more laid back, more closed down presentation by comparison. Okay, you could argue that it's been tuned purposely like that. Fair enough. I just feel that the biggest upgrade that the Cara could undergo is improving the bass in terms of the driver quality. If they put a driver which is of a better quality there, it will give that slam, that stop, that start-stop bass texture that you need, as opposed to being so pillowy, and then overall make the whole sound come together in a nicer fashion, okay? I've shown you the caster, and then finally the Blessing 3. Blessing 3. Let me just change the color of the Blessing 3 to something which can be more easily noticed. Let me make it red. Let me make it red. Sure, it will. There we go. Blessing 3. You notice straight away that yes, the Nova does have more energy in the bass. Although it's not the quality. The quality of the Blessing is fantastic. Of course, the way that it's then being balanced out with regards to the rest, because the difference really is not here in the mids, it's then up top. It does make the Blessing 3 more vocal centric, more vocal focused, as opposed to the Nova. But it's not as bad as you would think, and overall the Blessing 3 is still very capable. I've always actually thought that the Blessing 3, although initially I was kind of a little bit disappointed, once I started listening to it a little bit more and let it burn in a little bit and started playing around with tips and so on and so forth, the Blessing 3, especially with the green tips that I use from Panon, does come alive in a nice manner. And the truth be told, that although it graphs so thin in the bass, that's not entirely how it actually is perceived in terms of its sound. What you do notice compared to the Nova is, yes, that it's got more energy up top, but it's not so much the energy, but it's the quality of that upper mids and treble, which is just better. Okay, so it's very much the same situation as like on the Chopin. Here you definitely have more energy, but it's more quality. So when you actually crank it up, it maintains itself, and scales nicely. So there's no issues. The Chopin, the same situation. Is it a viable or is it a good way of getting the sound of the Blessing at a significantly less value? Yes, of course, definitely. The Nova will give you vibes of the Blessing 3 at a lower value, and perhaps even give you vibes of a possible Blessing 3 Dusk, because the bass quantity, like I said, not the quality, the bass quantity is maybe what the Blessing 3 should have had from the get-go. If maybe it had more bass. But then again, the Dusk will make sense afterwards, I guess. So anyway, it's marketing. Guys, that's it. That's my take on the Nova. I think it's a solid IEM. It's got its place in the market. It will have definitely its clients or its customers. Probably, is it the best IEM from TRUTHEARS? I don't know. It is definitely a solid IEM. That's the reality. Better than the Hexa, but it is let's say their current top of the line, and I guess it has done enough to earn that position as their current top of the line IEM. All right. Anyway, guys, any questions or anything that you might need, please feel free to ask, and I'll do my best to answer as quickly as possible. Take care now. Bye bye. Oh, and don't forget, subscribe. Thank you.